All right, final feelings for Georgia running up to Kentucky to finish off the SEC regular season. The Dogs will try to go back to back undefeated regular seasons in the SEC. That is not easy to do. We've seen it happen on occasion, but it has been an abnormal part of football in this league. Kentucky's going to have a really hard time in this game. There's a lot of different reasons why. I think last week's loss to Vanderbilt was really problematic for the Cats. When you start thinking about getting run on like that by Vanderbilt, a team that could just hardly get moving at all against Georgia, it's not a good look for the Cats. And I think that there's going to be a lot of trepidation in the stands. Commonwealth can be a really tough place to play if you don't watch it. I don't at all think that's going to be the case this time because when you lose the way that they lost this past week, it's just you know it's just a really bad look. And now you've got the number one team in the country coming to your place. You've got a program that a lot of folks felt like could fight Georgia for the East, particularly after they beat the Gators earlier in the year, and they just kind of crumbled once October started. But this is a Georgia team that Kirby feels like is ascending. That was the word he used the other night in Starkville. Um, there are some like little mistakes, some Hansel and Gretel clues on where Georgia's mistakes are, but by and large, they're just hitting you over the head with a hammer for 60 minutes, and it's a lot. I mean, I've seen Georgia go up to play Lexington in Athens and watched over and over again in basketball as Georgia's tried to pull an upset. And I think it was the 14 game or the 15 game for Georgia Kentucky where it looked like Georgia, they were up 8 with up whatever with about 8 minutes to go, and I never thought Kentucky was going to lose that game. I thought Kentucky would win that game for sure. So everything that this Georgia football team it kind of deals with, Kentucky basketball sees this all the time too, and you know, you just don't see them lose very often. In this case, I think this is a bad matchup for Kentucky as well. I mean, when you think about last year's game and how well Kentucky played during that game, they still got beat. Let me make sure I get the score right. 30-13, and the 13 was on the final play of the game. So this was not a Georgia. This was a real rough physical game. I think that's going to be the case this year as well. That Georgia plays the Jackets a week later is a really good thing because they've got to get ready for LSU soon thereafter. But hey, look, this is going to be a challenging game for Kentucky to win. I just don't see it. I think Georgia covers the line. And the other problem I think for Kentucky is they're just not going to score against Georgia. This is a UK team that has really not been turning it on offensively most of the season, but certainly in league play. I mean, they scored what, like 20, it wasn't much against the 26 or something like that against the Gators. And other than that, they've not eclipsed the 24 yard or the 25 yard or 24 point mark. Um, and I do think Mark Stoops has done a good job at UK. But when you start thinking about the amount of excellence that's headed their way, this is going to be a real big lift for Kentucky. We talked about earlier in the season that Georgia was going through its preseason, and that was, everything from the South Carolina game until Florida. And, it was what, Samford, Missouri, Kent State, Auburn, and Vanderbilt. Like that was the weak section of the schedule. We thought the close of this thing was going to be bad. I mean, it's just not looking like that at all. I mean, it looks like the traditional folks that are tough to deal with, Florida and Tennessee, that's who was tough. And obviously Oregon, a top 15, whatever you want to call it, top 10 team this year. They gave Georgia hardly a game in Atlanta. So I can't tell for sure if this is about how good Georgia is or how not great some of these other teams are. Florida is not a good team. South Carolina is not a good team. Vanderbilt obviously is not a good team. Mississippi State is an adequate team. They are probably somewhere in the universe of Florida. um, Tennessee is a good team. Tennessee's a team that, in a rematch, they could beat Georgia. And Tennessee just smoked Kentucky. I mean, that was the best game they've played all season, the Vols, 40 something to 6. So I think it's going to be something approaching that. I don't care that it's at Commonwealth. I don't care that it's on the road. None of that stuff matters to me. You're going to have to beat these guys, and you're going to have to do it in ways that a lot of people just can't do it. There's too much. What's the word? There's too. It is too complicated for teams that are not explosive the way Tennessee, Ohio State, whoever you want to call it. Um, the these teams, Kentucky, whoever, they can't, they don't have the kids. I mean, for all we're hearing about Will Levis and I mean, what the guy, he's not getting it done. None of the guys are. Rodriguez is a legitimate running back, no doubt. That guy's the real deal. But UK's line is just getting destroyed by by Vanderbilt. I mean, that just cannot happen if you're really planning on elevating to the degree of challenging Georgia for the SEC Eastern Championship. We've seen Kentucky. We know how Kentucky plays: physical, tough. They are cool with playing you in a phone booth, and it may be that Georgia says, "Oh well, okay, we'll play in a phone booth like we did in 2020 or 2018," or they may say, "Nah, we're just going to spread you out, and you don't have the guys to, run around with Darnell, Ladd, maybe AD, and Brock Bowers. You don't have them. You don't have a guy. You don't have a linebacker that is in the same universe as dealing with Kenny McIntosh coming out of the backfield." They may say that, and then they may say, "Oh well, okay, well now we'll play you in a phone booth for the second half." And then they probably will beat them that way. That's the real. This is not about Kentucky. This is about the challenge that other teams face when they're dealing with Georgia right now. This is a Georgia team that this team is never. Let's just say these guys win the last 5 games of their season. This team is never going to be compared to the greats of college football. They won't, because there's nothing outstanding about this team. There's no one thing that you're like, whoa, this defense is historical. This offense is historical. No, I mean that you're not going to see that. And with Oregon eating a loss, Tennessee may or may not get into the playoff. We'll see. This is not shaping up to be an all-time Georgia team. I mean, well, it is for Georgia, but not for college football. And I think that you know, to some degree matters. And we'll just see how this turns out. I don't see the Cats sticking with this. I think it's going to be a very challenging night for Kentucky up at Commonwealth Stadium in Lexington. We'll be there all the way. Hey, if it's about to be Christmas time. We're getting ready for Thanksgiving. This is a great gift for folks who have not gotten it yet. So check it out down below. Thanks for watching. We'll see you over on the website.